Hey everyone, and welcome back to Gotcha Interact. Today we're going to be taking a look at the second half of the 3.1 Star Rail banners today. First character we're going to be taking a look at is the new character, Mydei, and the second character on the other side of this banner is Huohuo. So let's go through both of these banners and see whether or not these characters, or maybe even their light cones, are a good pulling option for you. Now, let's get on to the video.
So the first character we do want to talk about is Mydei, the brand new character coming out for Amphorius, and looking at him, he's going to be an imaginary destruction unit. So let's quickly run through his kit. First and foremost, obviously his basic attack is just going to do some imaginary damage based off his HP. You're going to see throughout, as we go throughout his kit, he's going to be using HP to do damage, so you're going to want to focus on that a lot. Looking at his skill, he will consume HP by an amount equal to 50% of his current HP. Deals imaginary damage equal to 90% of Mydei's max HP to one designated enemy, and imaginary damage equal to 50% of Mydei's max HP at adjacent targets. Keep in mind that these are all at level 10 talents, or traces. If the current HP is not sufficient though, using skill will reduce Mydei's current HP down to 1. Obviously, as we get through some of the other things in his kit, we'll talk about those and jump back over into them, but let's go ahead and talk about his ultimate pretty quickly. Looking at his ultimate, it states that it restores HP by 20% of Mydei's max HP and accumulates 20 talent charge points and deals imaginary damage equal to 160% of Mydei's max HP to one designated enemy, and deals imaginary damage equal to 100% of Mydei's max HP to adjacent targets. Additionally, you will taunt the target and targets adjacent to it, lasting for 2 turns. The next use of Godslayer Be God will prioritize attacking one designated enemy, and this effect will work on the latest target. Looking at his talent, it will state that for each 1% of HP lost, you will accumulate 1 point of charge, which the burst was talking about, up to a maximum of 200 points. When charge reaches 100, you will consume 100 points of that charge to enter the Vendetta state. You will restore HP equal to 25% of Mydei's max HP, and advance action by 100%. While in the Vendetta state and it is active, max HP increases by 50% of Mydei's current max HP, and defense remains at 0. At the start of this unit's turn, automatically use Kingslayer Be King. Looking at Kingslayer Be King, it states that you'll consume HP by an amount equal to 35% of Mydei's current HP, and deal imaginary damage equal to 110% of Mydei's max HP to one enemy, and imaginary damage equal to 66% of Mydei's max HP to adjacent targets. If the current HP is not sufficient though, using the skill will reduce Mydei's current HP down to 1, and this ability will be automatically used. You cannot trigger it yourself. Now, looking back into the talent, it states that when charge reaches 150 points during the Vendetta state, Mydei will immediately gain 1 extra turn and automatically use Godslayer Be God. Looking down at Godslayer Be God, it states that it will consume 150 points of charge and deal imaginary damage equal to 280% of Mydei's max HP to one enemy, and imaginary damage equal to 168% of Mydei's max HP to adjacent targets. This ability will be automatically used. While this ability is in use, charge cannot be accumulated, whereas the other 2 uses of the skill, you can gain your charge as you lose HP. It states at the end of the talent though, when receiving a killing blow during the Vendetta state, Mydei will not be knocked down, but will clear his charge. He will then exit the Vendetta state and restore 50% of his HP back to his max HP amount.
Now let's talk about Huohuo for a little bit. Looking at her basic attack, she's going to deal wind damage equal to 50% of her max HP to a target enemy. And kind of similar to Mydei, she's also an HP scaler, but for a different reason. She actually uses her HP as a healer, and so if you want to heal your team very well, you're going to use HP, and she scales on that to do so. So basic attack, nothing crazy. She just uses her max HP to do a little bit of damage, but looking at her skill, and this is where her kit gets more important. So as a sustain, as an abundance character, she will be able to dispel 1 debuff from a single target ally with her skill, and also immediately restore this same ally's HP by an amount equal to 21% of Huohuo's max HP plus 560. And this is assuming that the talent is level 10, or the trace rather. At the same time, you're going to restore HP for allies that are adjacent to the target that you selected, and they will heal those 2 adjacent targets by 16.8% of Huohuo's max HP plus 448. So it is kind of a group heal. You pick one ally, they get a big heal, and the 2 allies on the side get a heal. Not quite as powerful, but still very helpful. Looking at her ultimate, she's going to regenerate energy for all of your teammates by an amount equal to 20% of their respective max energy. Also, at the same time, you're going to increase their attack by 40% for 2 turns. Once again, assuming the trace is level 10. Now looking at her talent, after using her skill, Huohuo is going to gain what is called Divine Provision. And this lasts for 2 turns, and you will actually be able to see this during gameplay by the little 2 indicator dots right next to her ultimate. This duration is going to decrease by 1 turn at the start of Huohuo's every turn. If Huohuo has Divine Provision, when an ally's turn starts or when an ally uses their ultimate, you're going to restore HP for that ally by an amount equal to 4.5% of Huohuo's max HP plus 120. So not a crazy amount, but it is just a little bit. At the same time, every ally with 50% HP or lower is also going to receive healing at one time. Now, when Divine Provision is triggered to heal an ally, you're also going to dispel one debuff from that ally. This effect can be triggered up to 6 times, and then using the skill again will reset the effect's trigger count.
Now that we've looked at each of the characters, talked about them a little bit more, figured out their kits, now let's go on to the question part of the video, looking at the real questions that you want to ask. The first being, do you actually need either of these characters on your account? Really looking at their value. And the first character we talked about was Mydei. And looking through his entire kit, hopefully you can understand that this guy is going to do some insane damage. Now, looking at the speculations, a lot of the beta and everything that a lot of people were talking about, in general with him, he is a very strong unit. There's definitely some back and forth on his strength in terms of top tier and meta, but there's plenty to show that he is going to be a very meta strong character. And a lot of people definitely have a lot to say about that, so if you want to go dive deep a little bit more, you definitely can. The idea here, though, is that you already can see how much he's changing his HP, and he is a destruction unit. So overall, if you're looking for a destruction unit to really hit more than one enemy at one time, this is a great kind of balance. And looking at that, hunt characters are really good at finding one enemy and usually triggering and fighting bosses that it's just them and them alone. But when you look at something like Erudition, for instance, they are really, really good at hitting multiple enemies. Pure Fiction, when there's just a bunch of enemies out on the field at one time, they excel even more. Destruction units are that happy medium. They do exceptionally well against bosses, and yes, they can be okay when you start to look at multiple enemies on the field, but they tend to do a lot of damage, which means that they tend to be better fighting against bosses. Keep in mind here that honestly, with Mydei, he definitely fills that role similar to Firefly, being better at being a boss shredder. And the great thing about him is that you don't have to worry necessarily about break, and he also has some exceptionally good things about him. I honestly think that with Mydei, and I am going to get Mydei as well, if you look at his kit, he actually has 0 skill points to be used. So he doesn't have to use any skill points when you use him. Even his regular skill and even Kingslayer be King, Godslayer be God, none of those, even the automatic ones, are going to still not use skill points, therefore allowing all your other characters to use up skill points as they please. That is honestly exceptionally good. Now, the thing to keep in mind with him, and the things that I do want to make sure everybody knows, is I did talk a lot about automatic usages and how that could possibly be an issue with some people's gameplay. So it really just does depend. Make sure that you guys are fighting that trial and using him first before you really make that decision of playing with him. Also, once they go ahead and drop and let us know a little bit more about him, go ahead and check out a little bit more gameplay as he comes out. Therefore, you kind of know what you're getting into. Rift, I don't know, what do you think? Honestly, I think he's going to be an exceptionally strong character, but he's definitely going to be an acquired taste.
Yeah, no, I think you're right. I think it's going to be a very powerful character, not just because of what we see in the kit, but it would only make sense, right? We're in 3.0, we're in Amphorius, you know, why would they release a new character and that just is underperforming like characters like Agli? Like, it just, that would be crazy. My point is, I think you're right. He's going to be very, very powerful. I mean, it's HP scaling. So while those numbers on the scaling that when we were talking about those numbers that, okay, he does 150% based on his max HP for a certain hit. Over here, this hit's like 200 something %. It's HP though. So if that was attack, that sounds pretty average, but because this is HP, it's actually a little bit more than it sounds like, at least for me, because I've always noticed that for HP, it feels more amplified. As if that was like 200% of their attack, it's going to be lower than 200% of the max HP. That's usually just how it feels from having played the game since launch. Also, Genshin, it feels the same way. You know, if you have an HP character, 40% of a character's max HP for a skill hit doesn't sound like a lot, especially if that said 40% of their attack. You know what I'm kind of getting at here? Like, Yelan's skill is like 40-something% of her HP, but it's a pretty nice 70, 80k if you have it built Yelan. So my point kind of like there is, as an HP scaler, I think Mydei is actually going to do a lot more than people might initially expect. If you just really kind of sit and think about that, it's a lot of HP. You're going to have him sitting probably around 8,000 on a well-built, maybe higher. And you're going to want to do that because of things like the bonus abilities and whatnot that give him crit rate for having more HP and etc. So I do think he's going to be a very powerful character, and we've been needing a new replacement for someone over at Imbiber Lune for the imaginary
For a long time.
destruction, because yeah, for a long time I'm like, okay, well we got Rappa, imaginary, DPS kind of unit. I'm like, yeah, but number one, it's break, so kind of one thing over here. Also,
Hmm.
it's erudition. So not that Rappa's bad. Rappa's amazing, but she's filling that role. We need just straight up normal DPS, and that's going to be Mydei here. It's very flexible, not held down to a lot of things. So I'm pretty excited to see this character. If I'm being completely honest, he already looks so cool. I know a lot of people in the community are just like all over him, and it's like, that's fair. So I think it's gonna be very valuable. If you need an imaginary DPS, I think he's your man to go for. If you don't, because you maybe already have one, maybe you do have Rappa already and you kind of see yourself doing fine. Okay, obviously I'm doing fine in pure fiction because I have Rappa. Um, I'm struggling in APOC though. I don't have a hunt DPS. I've never pulled Fei Xiao on her thing. I never got Boot Hill, even though I have my Rappa break team. I need like a hunt or just a boss killer. Mighty's going to be your man for that. Like Vixen was already saying, as a destruction units usually do very well, especially for the boss content, and they're just good at that. They just do a lot of good damage. So I think he's going to age like fine wine, in my personal opinion. But Vixen, what are your opinions on Huohuo for her overall value on someone's account?
I think it kind of depends. I really, really do like Huohuo. Honestly, the consistent amount of heals, and going back through this, kind of looking back at her kit again, she's a little bit of an older unit, so my initial thoughts on her was, okay, just heal her. And yeah, I know that she has the energy regen, and I do have a Glaya, but I don't have my Huohuo. And honestly, I've been doing just fine with Glaya without it. And so I thought, okay, I really don't need this character. And yes, I don't think that you necessarily need her on the account. I don't think that her value is at 1,000,000,000% and you have to pull her. At the same time, though, me and Rift were talking about this beforehand, she's just somebody who really hasn't really dropped in a negative way. Like, she hasn't actually gone into the negatives in need for somebody's account. So yeah, when she originally dropped, she was really good for that DOT team. Now with Aglaya, one of the best DPS in the game, she's also exceptionally well as the attack increase as well as the energy regeneration rate, never mind just a really good amount of HP and the widespread amount of it as well. The skill actually does all the healing, plus, debuffing, getting rid of some debuffs. Then you have her talent also helping out with even more healing, never mind some more debuffs, and you've got the ultimate giving attack and an energy help as well. And I think, Riff, the other day you were talking about this to me. You were saying, like, she's kind of just like if you smashed, like, abundance and harmony kind of together. And I think that's a really good way to kind of say it because of the kind of help that ultimate does do. If you think of somebody that does that, you can think of somebody like 4-star Tingyun, who does that kind of idea. So I definitely think that she's an extremely good unit, not just for the past and what you could kind of use her for, but I think for the future. There are plenty of units that still like to get energy back for their ultimates. I don't think that specifically talking about Mydei here, considering they're both on the same banner. She's not somebody that's going to be insane for Mydei, especially with that ultimate helping energy and attack. Two things he doesn't necessarily... One, he doesn't care for at all, being the attack, and the energy, it's just kind of... He gets over time, he doesn't necessarily need. So I think that she might not be exceptionally good for him. At the same time, she does really well with consistently healing, and with the amount of times that Mydei is constantly losing HP, having a healer wouldn't be terrible like her on the team. I definitely think that there are plenty of other characters, though, that can do that, even some 4-stars that do just fine instead. So I think that she has good value. I don't think that she's fallen off really in any sort of the word. If anything, she's actually gained some extra value considering a character like Aglaya, but I don't think that necessarily she is a must pull. It really just does depend on your account. But that's at least my thoughts. What do you think, Rift?
No, I totally agree. I was going to kind of bounce off that. Huohuo being a sustained type of character, like you said, has only just gotten more team options. She really hasn't fallen off in the slightest. She's just gotten more options to kind of play around with just new teams. Because in Starl, any solid team, any good team that's going to actually do content in a more realistic sense is going to need to sustain, whether that's a preservation unit or an abundance unit. There are, I know, risky teams you do out there. People like to zero cycle. If you're doing that kind of stuff, you don't need a sustain in that content. But outside of stuff like that, your account probably wants at the very least, one good sustain. So if you don't have a good sustain, or you've been, banking off Natasha and Lynx, which, props to you if you've been doing that, because I can't. So I haven't been doing that. So if you don't have a 5-star sustain, Huohuo is going to be definitely a good pickup. You'll definitely feel the value in her, especially if you just, once again, don't have another 5-star. You're going to be like, oh my goodness, this feels so comfortable. The heals are just insane. I can't die. The debuff's dispelling. She has her own effect resistance in her own kit. I think she gets like 18% effect resistance through her traces, the little ones off to the side, but also her bonus ability, number 2, I believe, gives her a lot of resistance to crowd control debuffing. I think 30 or 35%. So it's good that she personally has that, because especially an abundance character, as a sustain, if she gets debuffed or silenced in some kind of way, then your team's going to slowly go down the drain. And it's good that she kind of has that safeguard there. So overall, great character. And this kind of will segue into our next question, which is, what kinds of teams are you trying to build? And since we're kind of still here on the Huohuo mindset, kind of like I just said, if you don't have a sustain, she's not a bad pickup. Now, if you have your eyes set on another sustain that you just want, like maybe Aventurine, Lynx is a great one. If you're looking more specifically just abundance, Fu Zhuan she still does her job. It's just that most people are going to tell you Aventurine's better, and it's true. Lynx is just really, really good. Lynx has a lot of personal damage because of the types of teams that she's in. As a break team, she does a lot of good break damage. And then with Huohuo, it's kind of similar to Lynxia, but instead of being selfish by like, oh, here, I'm going to heal my team, but also maybe throw in a little bit of my own damage, let me just give everyone else attack and also help them with their energy regen. And that's just so good for several, like a lot of different teams just really like that. Anyone who has a ultimate that uses regular energy is going to like that. So Acheron's pretty much the only character that's like, yeah, I don't like you, Huohuo. I can't work with that. But even then, the attack is like, okay, that works. So if you don't have a better option, then hey, a team's a team, right? Vixen, what are some of your initial thoughts on team building for specifically Mydei and Huohuo?
Well, I think Huohuo, jumping on back onto that, considering we were talking about that, I think that with Huohuo, Aglaya is going to be your top option, with DOT probably on the same, or if not similar, maybe lower level, just because Aglaya is just in a stronger position right now than the DOT team. Not to say DOT is bad, I just mean that Aglaya right now is absolutely insane.
No, it's true. It's true.
Yeah. So, but like you said, honestly, she just has so much value among so many different characters that she can fit in plenty of different teams. Most DPSs are going to be using attack to do damage. So once again, that attack still is helpful. Part of that ultimate is still helpful, even if the other parts aren't. And if not, the energy is not helpful. But keep in mind, even with a team like Acheron, you still have characters like Sparkle or Sunday or whatever, where they need their energy to make sure that they're using their ultimates consistently. Using their skills is very nice, but using their ultimates is also extremely helpful, considering for those two characters, they give a lot of crit damage from them. So keep that in mind as you are kind of throwing that together in your own character kits, that it's not just your DPS that needs the help, it's also the other units in the team. Beyond that, though, we have Mydei. Now, Mydei is obviously a DPS, so he needs to be kind of in his own specific team. But he is really a hyper-focused team right now. In the future, it looks like we'll be getting a character that might work really well as a dual DPS. But in the future, that's going to be kind of something we'll probably see and talk about in the next Poll Not to Poll, whenever that kind of comes up. But right now, he seems like you really want to just put him in a full-blown Mydei-only team. Putting him probably with someone like Sunday or something like that, where you're kind of just funneling, a bunch of just extra buffs and whatnot. And honestly, just making sure you're healing him, giving him a lot of buffs that he needs. That's really, at the end of the day, really what you just need. Hyper focus, kind of like what you would do with a hyper carry Jingliu, or just kind of anything like that. Very similar idea. But Rift, what are you thinking a little bit about him?
Actually, when you briefly mentioned Jingliu there, that's exactly what I was thinking for a while. Even at the beginning of us talking about Mydei, I was thinking about Jingliu. I'm like, and the reason that is because the destruction path, of course, but also the playstyle seems very similar in a way. Like, of course, Jingliu has her own mechanic with her filling her crescent moons and stuff like that. You like to maximize that, get the 3 crescents, then you just go ham with that enhanced skill.
Right.
Feels really good. But obviously Mydei doesn't do that. He has a different mechanic. But they have a similar kind of result is what I'm thinking. So like Jingliu, a lot of people like to do that hypercare team, like you're talking about, Sparkle, Sunday, whatever sustain you have. That's a good team. My thought also is, I'm kind of curious to know your thoughts on some other maybe unconventional stuff, because he's going to be hitting 3 opponents at a time every time you do a skill or whatever. And all of these automated attacks are also hitting 3 opponents. So it kind of just humor me here. What if you did a Mydei Jade team?
I think that it could be exceptionally good. I've actually got to think about that. That was a very good idea. You have to think about how, Jade wants to have as much hitting as possible. It's not
Hmm.
necessarily the width of hitting, if I remember correctly. It's just the consistency, which is why 4-star Herda does exceptionally well. Not to say that 5-star Herda doesn't, but 4-star Herda almost works sometimes better in certain scenarios with Jade because she can help Jade more. Whereas I think Jade is helping the Herda more. But either way, that's the idea usually with that. With Jade, and like you're talking about, with the automatic usages of Mighty just constantly attacking, it could work pretty well. And if you have Jade and you want to throw your Mighty into Pure Fiction because maybe that's your only
Yeah.
5-star DPS or something like that,
Yeah,
it
it's more
definitely
like
could be
kind of like
helpful.
why not? Like it probably could just be fun. We
Yeah,
also don't. I don't know. Maybe you can help me on this. I don't remember ever seeing Quantum and Imaginary together a lot. It's usually you'll see
not a lot,
Quantum with some
no.
of the other elements like ice, physical, or something like that, or even wind. With Imaginary, you typically see fire, wind. I don't know. I'm just kind of going off of what I've seen from the game. That's probably not consistent, but you probably maybe some of you feel the same way. So probably not. It's just a thing that came to my mind. And I'm sure there's other kinds of things you could do where as a destruction unit, sometimes destruction units just do well when paired with another destruction unit, and then you just have one harmony and a sustain because they can kind of just bounce off each other. One team really early on that was like that was the original Jing Liu team with Jing Liu and Blade together with
Mm-hmm.
your, I forget the third character, but then also Luocha. And so that team just had a really nice core, especially for being early on in the game. That was just a solid team for quite a long time. And so it just makes me think about Mighty having a similar potential. Can he be played with some of these other destruction units? But also, like you said, what future characters are going to come out that specifically help Mighty and maybe a few other destruction units, or maybe just only help Mighty? And they're like, no, I'm gonna make Bro like even better, and he's already like best in slot in the game, but I'm gonna make out and bring him to another level. So I don't
Well,
know.
yeah,
Very very
we've
interesting.
got we've got characters like Tribby that are out, and Tribby works exceptionally
Mm-hmm.
well with him. Remembrance main character as well. So if you don't have Sunday, you can use Remembrance main character. I think once again, Tribby is definitely going to be one of the better ones right now. And the other
Mm-hmm.
character we were talking about was Castoris or Castoris, however you want to say her name. She's probably going to be that dual DPS type vibe in the future. But if that's kind of what you're thinking
True.
about right now, that's the quote unquote best with what you could do right now. Once again, using Robin or some of these other characters. Robin's really not an exceptionally good character, I've heard, just because once again, the attack is not really that helpful, but a lot of what she does with the
Right.
damage boost and whatnot can still be helpful. And the extra attacks that she does. But I think honestly, Tribby, RMC, and Luocha are probably going to be your best bets. Luocha is an exceptionally good character. He's kind of come back, especially once again with the whole idea of using the destruction and the HP changing and all that. You're having an imaginary blade for some odd reason come back in, and so Luocha is kind of bringing back his relevance for that
I
specifically.
love it.
So we're seeing some old characters, especially with the new DPSs that have been, given some use, whatnot. But next, we're going to be talking about, and very quickly, we'll talk about the light cones. Looking really quickly at the light cones, the first light cone we have is Flame of Blood, Blaze of My Path, or Blaze My Path, which is Mighty's light cone. At level 80, you'll be getting a certain amount of buffs with it, but looking at S1, it said it increases Wearer's max HP by 18% and incoming healing by 20%. When you use a skill or an ultimate, it will consume the HP by 6% and increase the damage dealt by this attack by 30%. If this effect's consumed HP is greater than 500, the damage additionally increases by 30%. If the HP is not sufficient, this effect will reduce the wearer's current HP down to 1 rather than killing them. So that's kind of what that does. You could try to use this on some other characters. Obviously, Mighty's going to be the best bet for it. So yes, that's going to be the best bet. You could try to maybe throw it on like Blade or something like that, because keep in mind, Blade is really the only other character that would want, first of all, is Destruction and would use this correctly with max HP and whatnot. Plus, you're probably not going to throw this on a 4-star anyways. And yes, speaking of Blade, Blade's light cone could work on Mighty, but honestly, with the idea of using other 5-stars on other 5-star units, just pull honestly Mighty's light cone. If you
Yeah.
for some odd reason have Blade and don't want to use him, you could throw this on him as well. And then a 4-star you could use is the new Ninja Record Sound Hunt, which I believe was an event light cone. So you probably have the S5 version of it, which at S5 it states it increases the wearer's max HP by 24% at S5, and when losing or restoring this unit's HP, you will increase your crit damage by 36%, lasting for 2 turns. He already gives himself a bunch of crit rate. In his traces, he gives himself a bunch of crit damage, so there's already a great way to increase his crit damage and crit rate already in his kit. So this 4-star actually does exceptionally well, and I think definitely is a very good, just second best weapon to use for him. But looking beyond Mydei's specific light cones, what are we looking at with Huohuo Rift?
Well, Huohuo's light cone is called Knight of Fright, and assuming it's just one copy of the weapon, it's going to increase the wearer's energy regeneration rate by 12%. When any ally uses their ultimate, the wearer is going to restore HP for the ally currently with the lowest HP percentage by an amount equal to 10% of the healed ally's max HP. When the wearer provides healing for an ally, it's going to increase the healed ally's attack by 2.4%, and that effect's going to stack up to 5 times, and also is going to last for 2 turns. That seems pretty good. Obviously, for Huohuo, having that extra energy regeneration rate to have her burst back means more energy also in turn for everyone, because that's what her burst does. Or her ultimate, rather. Her ultimate gives energy to everyone else. So more energy for her, more energy for everyone, and everyone's happy. Also more attack. There you go. So obviously very good light cone for her because of kind of how broad it is, and I think that's just because it's a support, especially as an abundance light cone. You can definitely use this on other abundance characters. Maybe you want your Natasha or Lynx to do a little bit better. That could definitely work. Other, healers on abundance could use this, because energy is always good. Any character is going to like the energy regen. And then also just restoring HP. Obviously, that's a abundance character's job. As far as other light cones go, I know that there's plenty of other 4-star light cones. As really the thing with Huohuo is just give her HP, because that's what she uses to heal. So any light cone, 4-star abundance light cone that's giving her more HP, it's going to be good. Energy regen is going to be good. So don't have to get too specific with that.
Yeah, things like post-op and quick protocol are going to be great options for it. Just once again, those 4 stars are absolutely insane. But yeah, overall, looking at these, I don't think either one is necessary because they do have really good 4-star options. So usually, if you know me, Rift, I'm always there to say, if you have a DPS, always go for the light cone. If you could forego anything else in the game, go for that S1 for DPSs. Honestly, I'm going to back off of my normality here. I'm going to, somebody check my temperature, because I actually think that honestly, you really don't need his light cone. Is his light cone exceptionally good? Does it really help him? Yes, 110% yes. But can he live without it? Yeah, and I think it's mainly because of Ninja Record. If you don't have this, if you weren't there and didn't get it, I believe this is an event light cone. Pray that that's correct. If you guys, have that and you have it, especially at S5, then that's going to be an exceptionally good weapon. And if I'm just going it absolutely insane and this isn't, then even at S1, this is still a pretty good light cone, and a lot of people are going to be using it. So I definitely think that this is still a very good weapon and a very good light cone to use for him. So I definitely think that he doesn't need it. Never mind, just like Riff said, there's plenty of 4-star light cones that work really good on Huohuo, and those 2 that I talked about were very good anyways in their own right. Never mind the others that also just work because, especially with abundance units, it's a little bit more broad and can kind of help everyone. Well, that's everything we've got talking about Mydei and talking about Huohuo. If you guys did like the video, please go ahead and like and subscribe. Let us know what you guys think about these banners, the light cones, maybe what you guys are thinking you guys want to pull for. Let us know down in the comments. Thank you guys though for watching the video, and we'll see you guys in the next one.